am waiting up against a gate here for a guy to come pick up the bull he has just bought from me. This was shortly after my barn had been burnt to the ground courtesy of the neighborhood meth addict. My bull customer pulls up, sees me standing there to get his bull, and he can see over my shoulder the smoldering remains of my barn. And he has this sort of what happened look in his eye. And I say, as almost as a joke, well, at least they caught the guy. He then asked me this: was he black? He had taken one look at me, and he had prejudged me to be on his side on particular issues. In that prejudgment, we call this prejudice, by the way, he took one look at me and he assumed how I would think and act and function on certain topics. You see, we can be prejudiced toward something as easily as we can be prejudiced against something. So this guy was prejudiced towards me based on how I look. We can also define the word bias. You see, this farm boy, he had a bias toward me because of how I look and the fact that we're on a farm. All of it suggested, that I would be like-minded with him. His words also suggested he had a bias against black people, assuming anyone who burnt down my barn would be black, and that he was going to go home with more evidence for his bias in the world. They didn't know I'd adopted 4 black kids. Now, it is absolutely prejudicial and biased of me to even suggest that every white man coming to buy a bull will say or think the same thing just because of how they look. I'm prejudiced. I'm biased too. We all carry this inside of us. Prejudging is what we do before we have enough information to actually judge. We do all this if we are black or white, Asian, Latino, fat, thin, short, tall, it doesn't matter, okay? It's a survival instinct. We predetermine as we approach a situation, as we approach people, humans, whatever it is, we instinctually predetermine if someone is going to be friend or foe. It's a basic animalistic survival skill. It's totally normal. It's totally explainable why we do this. And at one point in our world, it probably served kind of an important function, right? To predetermine, to prejudge if we're safe here or not. Now, we white farm boys often will angrily insist that we don't do this, even though it's a basic animalistic instinct in all humans. It's like trying to argue we don't breathe. We instinctually breathe, just like we instinctually look for danger, okay? The fact that this is in us doesn't in and of itself make us bad. But when we are accused of being prejudiced or biased, which, folks, I am prejudiced and biased, we got all huffy about it because we think you're calling us bad, even though we all have bias and prejudices. Still, being accused of doing something bad, even though we all do it, it hurts our feelings. But we can't express it that way because we're too tough to have our feelings hurt. So it ticks us off. We get angry. That's what happens when tough farm boys get feelings hurt. We get ticked off instead. So this is why it's incredibly difficult to get some people, including people like me, to listen to a presentation on bias and prejudice, especially when it's offered to us by a black woman. That's bias. I have it. We all have it. When we get a training on racial bias, I can tell you what happens. We'll get a training on racial bias and prejudice, and a black woman will walk in, and we're going to say, oh boy, here we go. Another lecture on how we're bad. Another lecture on how we're racist. Another lecture on how we're doing everything wrong. And we put up our dukes. We get defensive about it. We say, I know where this is going. We want so desperately to resist the notion that anything in us is bad. So much so that we can't actually hear what the black woman is actually going to say to us. It happens every day. So we get all torqued off. We think that these people are pushing their agenda on us, that they're part of the woke mob. They're our new boogeyman. And we push all these ideas that we have subconscious biases, even though we all do. We push the idea out of our mind. It's impossible. But prejudging people, folks, is real. It happens all the time. It's instinctual. It's totally normal, and it does not mean we're bad. So we got to stop first hearing those words. It doesn't mean our prejudices or our bias are helpful, that it's a helpful practice anymore. And I'm not here to argue whether such biases or prejudices are justified either, whether it makes sense that we're biased against black people for this reason or that reason, or that we're afraid of white police officers, or we have these prejudices. I'm not arguing whether it's justified. If I did that, I wouldn't be able to make a point. But pretending bias and prejudice don't exist is nonsense. That's my point. The problem is not our conscious biases. It's our unconscious biases that get us in trouble. When things operate out of our subconscious, we've got no control over them. Our aim, then, what we're trying to do here, is make sure our subconscious isn't controlling our decision making. It isn't controlling our reactions to situations. It isn't controlling how we behave when we approach somebody that may not look like us, or talk like us, or think like us, without at first talking to them and hearing them and getting what they think, hear, and feel.